FM 94, The Dark. It is that time again. It's time to get to know a band we play here on The Dark. And tonight, we're going to learn another band out in the Northwest. And this band is called Silent Theory. In fact, they were a winner of the Rock of the Dark New Music Poll back in August with their song called Fragile Mind. On the phone right now, I'm talking with Dakota and Bob. Dakota, of course, the vocals. Bob, one of the guitarists. First of all, guys, thanks so much for joining me. And how are you guys doing tonight?
Yeah, absolutely. We're doing pretty good. I'm doing pretty good anyway. I'm just chilling. It's pretty nice weather.
Awesome.
We're just happy to be here, man.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to start with you, Dakota, right away, because what we want to do here is kind of learn a little bit about this band. So we'll start with you, Dakota, and I think, if I remember right, doing a little bit of reading, you were one of the guys that kind of came in at the end to complete this band. But can you give us the history of the band and how this band all got started?
I was a late addition, but as far as I know, it's Scott and Mitch were the founders and their brothers, and then George was brought on and Bob were brought on. As far as I know, I think it started in 2008. I didn't actually start doing any of this until about 2011, so I was pretty late to the game. So all this is pretty new to me still, all the interviews and all the different just kind of accolades that come with a good song.
So I'll bring Bob into the question since you're a little older, at least with the band. That is, kind of give us. Yeah, I said that as with the band. I didn't say anything more than that. But what's the history of the band? I guess for you, Bob.
Actually, Mitch and I have been doing this since like about 2007. Back in the day, we were a band under the name Faded. It was a completely different genre of music, and it was a good time, but it was definitely a more amateur thing. We learned a lot playing a lot of small shows and doing things like that. And then over the years, there was kind of a situation with a manager and one of the other members and stuff like that, and it was just best for everyone that we kind of parted ways. And so Scott, Mitch, and I and another singer at the time, and kind of sat down and decided whether we wanted to keep doing it, and we did. And so. We sat around in a Mexican food restaurant for about 4.5 hours discussing names and things of that nature, and finally settled on Silent Theory. And then from there, it just kind of took off. Like, we started writing new songs. We got really excited. We brought George into the fold, and we released an album in 2011, and went on a national tour in 2012 in support of it. We actually came up kind of in your guys' neck of the woods. We played. Trying to think where else we played in Minnesota. I know we played in a town called Elizabeth, pretty far up north, kind of by Fargo.
Okay, yeah.
But, we played all over the Midwest, and it was a good time. We had a lot of steam, and came back and really, we just didn't do a whole lot after that. We lost our singer to just life. Like, he had other plans going on, and so he moved on, and then we were kind of in a perpetual holding pattern and stuff until we our paths crossed with Dakota. And, I would say that in the last, 18 months, things have been so much stronger and moving forward, and just like the quality of the music we're writing now. And, it's a different energy on stage. Everything is so different. We're just really excited with the way things are going right now.
That's cool. Let me keep talking with you for a second, Bob, since you can give me some insight, I guess, a little bit more on Dakota and his singing style. From what you had prior to him and now what you have, what have you noticed the difference? And then I guess the other question is, what kind of gravitated you guys to have him be your singer?
There's a few things. One, he's got some pretty awesome hair. Nature has run its course a little early with Scott and I, so we are lacking in that department. But Dakota, he was in another band, and it was one of those, we were looking for a singer, and his band wasn't really doing much at the time, and so people who knew us kind of put us in his direction. We started chatting, we were listening to his music, and just the first time we heard him singing with his other band, we're like, this is the guy. And so we brought him up. He was living in Boise at the time, and we had him practice with us. And we were a little nervous because, there's with technology today, there's a lot of leeway you can have with recording. And so we were like, well, hopefully it's not just one of those, he sounds good on tape. Mm-hmm. And the first time we practiced, he showed up, he knew, probably 80% of the lyrics to the songs that we had sent him. He was focused, he was serious. And to be honest, he just sounded so good. And it was just one of those, like, it was a different sound than we'd ever had, but it just felt right. And so, like, I mean, from the word go, it's been so positive with Dakota.
Awesome. How about for you, Dakota? Obviously, you hearing that right now, that's got to be, first of all, it kind of feels good to hear that. But I guess for you, what kind of gravitated you to the band Silent Theory?
It absolutely feels good to hear all that. What gravitated me closest was when I got up there, the way that they sounded was exactly the way that they sounded on the album. I was with kind of a mediocre band, too. Mine was kind of at the starting stages of maybe doing something. But then we got into some kind of drug issues, and then we just kind of fell out. And then I got a call, and they were like, hey, we need a singer. So I drove the 6 hours up from Boise to Moscow, and when I got there, they were so put together, and all their equipment was just out and ready to go, and it's just I'd never been with anything like that before. Everything I'd ever been with was, I mean, we had like a starter kit for a drum kit. It was basically a kick drum, a snare, and a hi-hat. And then, me and one guitar player. And so we did pretty well. We went to L.A. and we recorded a little album there, a little EP, I guess. And they heard most of the songs from that. And I guess that kind of made some appeal. But I listened to their single at the time out of my head, and their singer was so deep. He kind of was that Nickelbacky kind of much deeper, let's say, Daughtry. And I knew that from the beginning I was going to be something totally different than they'd heard, because I actually started in rap, and so I was into this freestyle kind of thing up in Seattle when I was growing up, and so I was really good and quick on my feet. And so they had these, like, I guess these little scrub songs that they hadn't quite written lyrics to, and they just started playing them for me, and I just kind of sang over the top of them, and we eventually got Boogeyman and Faceless out of those. And we just started creating these new batches of songs. And before I knew it, I was just in the band. I didn't even know what I was really doing. I was just kind of coming up every weekend. No one ever officially said, Dakota, hey, you're in our band. It was just kind of, once I got there and we clicked, it was it. That was the end of the story.
That's cool.
Yeah, that is kind of true. We didn't really ask him if he wanted to be a part of it. We basically just said show up for practice and showing up.
Exactly.
And you got the gig after that, right?
I did, yeah.
The rest is history. You mentioned the rap, and I've listened to the new album, Delusions, which I believe came out a couple weeks ago now. And there's definitely kind of a rapish flavor to some of the songs. So I can see where that has come from, at least in your vocals, Dakota.
Yeah, I was always a fast tongue, man. I could always spit pretty quick.
I don't want to compare you guys to anybody, and that's something I was trying to figure out too. I've been listening to the CD a few times when I'm in the car, just driving around town and stuff, and I'm trying to put a kind of a pinpoint of, okay, who does this kind of sound like? But in reality, you don't sound like one band. You sound like multiple bands kind of together, and I think in a way that might be a compliment to you guys.
I think that's a great compliment.
Absolutely. I think we all have similar interests in music, but at the same time, we have a lot of varying backgrounds in, like, the music we grew up listening to and stuff like that. And I think it's kind of cool that we can, like, when you listen to our album, it's all, like, there's continuity there, but at the same time, like, some of them have a little bit of an R&B feel. Some of them have a little bit more of just a straight-up, like, in-your-face rock and roll feel and stuff. It's just, I don't know. I really like it when bands do stuff like that.
For sure.
Yeah, you do. I mean, I will say the first half of the album is kind of like in your face, and then the second half then does have more of that R&B kind of feel to it a little bit too. And of course, people probably a lot around here haven't heard the album yet, but hopefully they're going to hear that. And we'll talk about that album coming up in a little bit. Let me get back to the question, and we kind of were starting to talk about it here, influences when you were a kid or growing up. What were some of the influences that both of you guys had and kind of made you the artist you are today? And I'll start with you first, Dakota. Kind of who influenced you to get into the music side of things?
Oh, man. I remember to this day, back in elementary school, I was so into Linkin Park.
Yeah.
Just head over. Because, I mean, it was about 2000, 2001 when I was kind of in elementary school. And that's when that whole new metal wave was kind of coming through. And I just remember buying Hybrid Theory with the only $10 I had and popping that thing in a CD player and just sitting there with repeat and just listening to it. And I was just like, okay, there's rap here, there's rock here. I dig it. I've heard it before. You'd heard it with Red Hot Chili Peppers. You'd heard it with Rage Against the Machine, which were also influences of mine. But for the most part, yeah, Linkin Park was that band that I just wanted to be.
I got that. And not to like pigeonhole you into anything, but yeah, there's definitely the first few songs on the album, they kind of have a Linkin Park kind of feel to them.
Yeah, no, and I mean, that's a compliment to me. Another one would be Chevelle, probably. I love Chevelle. Great band. 10 Years, another great band, which I think is underrated.
Oh, yeah.
So underrated.
They are very underrated. In fact, a couple months ago, they were up at a festival here we called Halfway Jam, and I got to meet Jesse and Chris and some of the boys from there, and they put on one hell of a show. They only had about an hour to play, and they actually had their van break down, so they had to rent something just to get their ass up here. No. Long story short, they put on one heck of a show, and hopefully they'll be back soon. But, yeah, that's a band that's really cool. And, they've got a lot of history, too. How about for you, Bob? What's kind of some of the background influences that you've had growing up and kind of molded to who you are today?
Growing up, my musical background was pretty much all over the board. Because everybody, it seemed like in my family, listened to something a little bit different. Like, my mom is, these days she listens to a lot of gospel music. But, like, growing up, like, every time we were in the car, it was just all like 50s and 60s, just like that really classic stuff. And then my dad was always listening to like Phil Collins and like that kind of like late 80s pop kind of stuff, and a little bit of rock here and there. And when I started kind of like figuring things out for myself, I'm not gonna, no need to divulge like specifics, but I am a little bit older than most of the guys in the band and stuff, and so I did catch a little bit of the tail end of like the late end of the grunge and like some of the really great hip hop of the 90s and stuff like that. You can't deny the talent that went into a lot of that. But like, I will say the first like real hard rock album that I ever like owned, which I know will divide a lot of the your listeners here because it seems to be a controversial subject, is the Black Album by Metallica.
Metallica, yeah. Oh yeah.
And I really enjoy that album, and I will say this with few exceptions to include like Saint Anger, I like most of the Metallica like portfolio. I feel like the Black Album is that divider where people either like everything before it or like everything after it, but not all of it. But it's cool the way they reinvented themselves and like kept making great music that was different than what they had been doing before.
Absolutely. We're talking with Dakota and Bob from the band Silent Theory. Bob, and you kind of got into this right when we were talking about the history of the band, but you mentioned the name Silent Theory. You guys sat down and came up with that. How did you guys come up with that name, and is there a story behind that?
A little bit. I mean, like I said, we were sitting at a Mexican restaurant and a few margaritas and just a whole lot of Mexican food, and just it was literally just kind of it started off as a little bit of fun, then it got kind of frustrating, and then it got silly. Like, it was just a process. We were all sitting around with like notebooks and like scribbling stuff down, and like, well, what about this? Well, no, like, I don't know, like that, and like just people coming up with ideas, and every time there was about 5 or 6 times like, oh, that is a sweet name, and then we'd like look it up and be like, oh no, that's a reasonably successful band out in the Midwest, or something like that. We're like, ah. And then it was just, I don't know, like, I can't even remember who said it, but just out of nowhere, somebody's like, well, what about Silent Theory? And, it was one of those, like, we kind of got kind of quiet. We're like, well, as we're mulling it over, like, I mean, it's kind of got a ring to it, because, it's a little weird. Like, what does it mean? Like, I don't know, like, but it's kind of cool, because it makes you think a little. And then, so we started looking it up, and at the time, like, there was no other bands that we could find. There was nothing else, that seemed to have that, like, that name, and so we kind of test drove it for a little bit and went with it, and it just, it really stuck, and people responded well to it at shows, and so we went with it. Later, we come to find out there is a clothing company in Australia that supplies the name of Silent Theory, so we sure hashtag with them from time to time on social media, but for the most part, it's been pretty good for us and easily identifiable.
Well, maybe when you guys really become huge, like Metallica huge, they can do your T-shirts for you.
Yeah, right. Maybe they're a little more from what I can tell from their advertisements. I think they make clothes for skinnier folks and so maybe Dakota can throw on some of their T-shirts.
I'm curious how many fans they might have gotten, because they kind of have a rockish style background too.
Okay.
Yeah, no, their clothes are pretty cool. I don't think they fit me very well.
Yeah.
Well, you got to have a little extra up in the northwestern there, right? Part of the U.S. a little bit?
Oh, man, I don't think our winters get quite as cold as your guys.
Probably not.
Yeah, they get pretty bad sometimes.
Hey, let's talk about the scene up in that area. It's kind of a pretty buzzing scene in that Idaho/Eastern Washington area, isn't it, for the rock side of things?
You know, it is really making a comeback. There was a period of time where, like, just it didn't really matter what kind of music it was. People weren't really going to shows. And so there's been a few venues that we played at, you know, a lot back in the day that don't even exist anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a few of them that have changed hands and stuff like that. But it's really encouraging as we've been getting back out into the scene and, you know, really pushing this new album. It's encouraging to see that, like, you know, we've gone to a couple shows. When we were up in the studio recording the album, we were up there on like a Wednesday or something like that. We went to one of the venues and just caught a show. And, you know, there was like 150, 200 people at the venue on a Wednesday night. I mean, so it's good to see that people are going out and like catching, like actually seeing shows again. And it's definitely like there's a lot of really great bands up here. And I think you guys have played a few of them, like Live in Barcelona. You guys,
Yep.
like they're really good friends of ours. And you know, there's just a lot of really positive things going on. In our immediate area, unfortunately, there's not like a whole lot of great things, but like, you know, we have the advantage of being driving distance to Spokane, Seattle, Portland, Boise, and stuff like that. So we kind of we diversify a little bit as far as like where home actually is for our live shows. But you know, it is definitely a growing scene out here.
Very cool, very cool. Well, I guess for you, Dakota, what's the I guess the vibe right now of rock radio? And I guess what's the vibe of Silent Theory when it comes to rock radio? How are you guys being received right now?
Oh man, this song has just been successful. Is kind of the word I would put. Everything it seems to jump into, it kind of does really well. It gets a lot of feedback. Just recently, I kind of storm through YouTube every now and again, and I go and read some of the comments that are left. And I always think it's really important for bands to do that. Not just to kind of see what the reaction is, but just to kind of see what people like and what people don't like.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, for the most part, everything has been positive, and that just, I mean, boosts my ego a ton, and it also makes me feel fantastic. And I'm just glad to see that this band is, after a year hiatus, is coming back strong.
Very cool. You know, you're talking about the new song "Fragile Minds," which is currently spinning on our airwaves, and that. I guess let me ask you this question too. And you know, your peers, obviously, fellow bands are in the industry. How are they responding to that song, and for that matter, your band and makeup? And either one of you can answer this question.
I would.
Go ahead.
Okay, just from what I've heard, most of the people that we've talked to, like Jimmy Hill, our producer, was telling us that most of the people who've listened to it have just been blown away. They're just like, wow, this is fantastic. And then, you know, my dad kind of throws it around at people in Boise, and for the most part, there's a couple bands in Boise that I know, Faded Leroy's down in Boise, and they messaged me saying that it was an amazing album. So, I mean, it's mostly good feedback from bands.
Very cool, very cool. Hey, Bob, let's talk about the album a little bit. Give us kind of the. I mean, I've listened to the album, but I guess what's kind of the story behind the album? Is there a certain kind of a story to it? Is there a direction to it? Obviously, the album's called Delusions. Give us a little bit of history of this album.
You know, it's kind of funny because, like Dakota was saying, we had a couple of incomplete songs when he first joined the band, and like we had one that was, you know, pretty complete, and then the rest of them were just, we had some riffs and stuff like that, and things that we'd been messing around with for, you know, an extended period of time. And so it was some of them we wrapped up pretty quick, and with Dakota coming in and just like, I will say he's really good on the lyrics. It was just something that is refreshing, because if you listen to Black Tie Affair, like, I mean, it's our first album that we released, and it's a totally different direction. Like, it's almost a different band. And if you listen to that album, Mitch, the drummer, and I, we wrote like 80% of those lyrics. Scott wrote like 90% of the songs and stuff like that. And so there was a little bit more of like a form to it, as far as like we kind of figured out like our way of doing things and stuff. And the nice thing about this album was that it was so much more collaborative. Like, it's something that we've always tried to do and, like, things that we've always appreciated in bands. But, like, this one was truly more collaborative. And, like, Dakota just brought so much to the table, and it opened up so many conversations about, like, well, what do we want these songs to be about? And obviously we didn't want it to be, like, a really depressing, like, overtone of an album and stuff like that. And so, like, we tried to keep it a little bit lighthearted, but, I mean, I don't know, we just kind of, as we were, like, writing songs and, like, talking about things that, like, you know, we were currently inspired by, like, and things that we were, like, reading in the media and just things that we were seeing in our everyday life. You know, some of them were coming out a little more on the dark side of things. And, you know, they're unintentionally, like, kind of became a theme among a few of the songs with, you know, just, like, torn relationships and, like, a little bit of mental illness here and there and stuff like that. And so, like, it all kind of, like, flew under that, like, when we were discussing names, it kind of flew under the banner of, like, delusions of, like, you know, whether it's, like, an actual, like, mental illness delusion or if it's just, like, you know, a toxic relationship that you're trying to make work, and, you know, and you're making yourself delusional thinking that it'll work. Or, you know, things of that nature. It all kind of, it worked. But the nice thing about this song, or this album, was that, like, you know, Scott still does 90% of the music writing because he's just phenomenal at it. But it was just, like, he would come with, like, a guitar riff, and then Mitch would be like, well, you know, what about this on the piano? Or I mean, even George. Like, George is a phenomenal piano player. And so it was kind of interesting because, like, we'd never had a piano in the band before. And so, like, it was nice to just, like, kind of spread our wings and expand a little bit and just not be afraid to try things.
Yeah, that's cool. Very cool. Well, what's it like? I mean, obviously, you guys are the non-brothers of the band. What's it like to be hanging out with three brothers in a band? I mean, is there any tension there? Are these guys pretty level-headed, kind of even keel?
Absolutely level-headed.
Yeah, no, it's
they're gonna hear this later, you know.
Oh, yeah.
It's actually a pretty unique situation. Like, their family is the most open, welcoming, like, supportive family you could hope for. And, like, I mean, Mitch is my best friend. We've been, you know,
right.
We lived together for, like, 5 years. And, you know, Scott and I used to sit in, like, coffee shops for hours on end, like, working on homework or, like, working on band stuff. And, like, George and I, yeah, I don't know, like, we would, well, George and I usually just drink and smoke cigars. But, so, like, it's always, like, we've always been pretty close. And then, like, I feel like it was pretty cool because, like, we didn't even miss a step. Like, when Dakota came in, like, it was just their family is so welcoming. Like, they do family dinner every Sunday, well, most Sundays and stuff like that. And they're such a welcoming group that, like, we're not, I don't feel like I'm an outsider. I've never felt like an outsider in the group.
Right.
And we've really made an attempt to keep Dakota in the fold because we don't want him to feel ostracized, especially because, you know, he came in a little bit later and, like, he moved up to us to be a part of the band and stuff like that. So we really made a solid effort to include him.
Awesome. We're talking with Silent Theory. Dakota is the vocalist, and Bob, one of the guitarists. You guys have been doing a little bit of touring, as you mentioned. I'm going to ask both of you this question. If you had to put together your ultimate three-band bill tour to go out with currently, who would you like to go out with? And I'll start with you, Dakota.
That's a great question. I would love to do a show with Rev Theory.
Yeah.
Because.
Rich,
and just call it a theory tour.
You're gonna get Tyler too, then, from Theory of a Dead Man, and just have all the theories. Or
there
what?
you go. I think that was the joke we made a long time ago. We just call it the lost theories or something like that.
Exactly.
But a really good one that I would love to play with would be Seether.
Yeah.
Seether would be fantastic to play with, and so would Chevelle, just because I'm such a huge fan.
Yeah. We just with that festival here, Halfway Jam. They had Seether, Theory of a Dead Man here, and boy, both of those bands, they've been around for a while. They know how to do it, and they put on one heck of a show. And I got to believe that you'd love to be playing with bands like that to learn from them, wouldn't you guys?
Oh, totally, yeah.
How about for you, Bob? Who would you love to go out on a bill with?
You know, I'm going to take it a slightly different direction. But, like, you know, when we were on the road before, our paths crossed with a couple bands who were kind of you know, I'd say they're probably a step or two ahead of where we're at now, but it in the same kind of like right around the same level as us, and
Right.
like they're just the band Shallow Side and the band Another Lost Year, and they're both so absolutely amazing live. They're good dudes, and you know they're so professional, and like they put so much effort into their live show, and like it's one of those, like, I feel like it would always be a good show because, like, you know, it's a friendly competition of always trying to one up the other guy, and just like, and the fans are, you know, really getting their money's worth every night. And then there's one other band that I would love to tour with, the band Wayland. Like,
Oh, yeah.
I don't know.
Hey, yeah.
I enjoy their music, and I follow them on all of their social media because I think they're absolutely hilarious. Like, they're always just doing the weirdest stuff. And their bass player, Dean Pizzazz, like, I don't even know how to describe him. He's just a weird dude who rocks so hard.
Yeah, you just described him to a T. I had a chance to interview him about a year ago, and yeah, they're crazy, but they're fun. That's the cool thing, man. And you know, Shallow Side's another band that they're finally coming up. In fact, this week they just hit the top 50 in the media base. So I think at number 48 with their latest song Rebel. So that's cool.
Yeah,
That's huge for a band, especially to get into the media base top 50.
Oh, absolutely. Like, it's really exciting to see those guys succeeding because there was one show in particular that we played with them and Another Lost Year in Indianapolis, and it was just, they are so, like, I don't know, like, it's hard to explain without actually seeing them. They're just so good live.
Well,
and, like, their music is just really good.
Well, rumor has it they're going to be making their way here sometime before the end of the year, right here in Little Falls, so we're looking forward to that, so that should be cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, let's talk about kind of what's going on for you guys, touring-wise. Are you getting ready to go out and doing some touring? What's the next step here now after you got the album out?
You know, we don't have anything set in stone yet. We obviously have some shows coming up. We have 2 shows next week in Boise, and then we have a few shows like over the next couple months, like kind of regionally. I don't know. I don't know if there's any plans like to tour immediately. I mean, obviously we'd love to. Like, I mean, who doesn't want to be on the road playing music every day?
Right.
But I think it's definitely something we're looking forward to. Probably like springtime. It's a little bit easier to tour when the weather's a little bit better, unfortunately. And so that's definitely something we're looking at in the spring. I don't know. When we went on the road before, we went out for 3 months or so, and it was so much fun, and it was definitely an eye-opening experience as far as, like, you know, a different side of the industry. And I think if we went out again, we'd probably do things a little bit different. But, I mean, we're definitely always looking for opportunities to get on the road and go meet new fans and, you know, just spread the word of Silent Theory. I don't know. It's one of those, like, we love playing shows because we believe in the music we make, and we really just are excited to share it with people and, you know, meet the people who are helping make it possible for us to do that. So
Absolutely. And of course, you know, you guys have, I know last week, I think you got for the first time in a chart, Radio Contraband, you were hit the top 50, you're at number 49. That's got to feel pretty good, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I have never been so excited to be second from the bottom of the list. I mean, it's such a unique opportunity.
Hey, you were just two places out of it the week before at 52. So
yeah, it's absolutely amazing the love and support this song has been getting. I mean, Fragile Minds, like, obviously we like it, but it's just been really, like, humbling to see how it's been, like, doing and the responses it's been getting.
All right, last question. I always love asking this question to my artists, and I'll ask both Dakota and Bob this. And I'll start with Bob on this one first, so Dakota gets a little more time to think about it. But what artist, and it can be any artist, any genre out there, would you like to cover a Silent Theory song?
Ooh.
I like that question.
So I'll start with you, Bob, first.
You know, that's an interesting question. That is a great question. And I think kind of like we were talking about with our music being a little more diverse, like, it's almost like a multi-part answer, like, because we have our song Boogeyman, which is, you know,
I've
an
heard it.
up-tempo, just kind of hard rocking song. Like, I don't know, it'll must be interesting to see somebody like a Slipknot or something like that cover that and just, you know, take it to that next level of just, like, in your face.
You know what? I could hear that, because I've heard that song a couple times on your album. I definitely could hear that. I could see that happening.
Yeah, I don't know.
How about for you?
We have a couple other mellow songs that I think any number of people could do something really cool with.
Yeah.
So, but I think if I had to pick one, I think I would like to hear Slipknot do Boogeyman.
Okay. How about for you, Dakota? Now you've had a little more time to think about this.
Oh, man, that's easy. Guar.
Guar, okay.
No, I'm kidding. A really good one. Man, that would be Dave Grohl. I'd love to hear Dave Grohl do a cover of something of ours.
Right.
Because he would just bust it down to something probably contemporary or a little bit slower.
I could see that. And a Seattle kind of a theme, too, to it, right?
Totally. Absolutely.
Hey, this has been a lot of fun, guys. And I guess what I wanted to do here at the end here is let everybody out there know how they can find out more information about the band Silent Theory. So how can they do that, guys?
Well, that is actually a great question. We are on, most, if not all, of the typical social media sites. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I would look us up under Silent Theory Music. Most of our stuff, because of the clothing company, has been tagged with Silent Theory Music. But you can also go to silenttheory.com and check out all the great radio stations such as yourself that are spinning our tune. You can check out our upcoming shows and just kind of follow us on all those things. But definitely hit us up on Facebook. Let us know what you think of the song, and we love talking to fans.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Dakota, Bob, thanks so much for joining me. In fact, we're going to spin your latest song, Fragile Minds, right now, okay?
Thanks so much, Jay-Z.
Once again, that is Dakota, that is Bob. They're from the band Silent Theory. Their latest song is called Fragile Minds. You're hearing it right now. It's on The Dark. It's on FM 94.